As we hear this familiar gospel account of the rather unusual, unique experience of the transfiguration of Jesus, we might notice a seeming contradiction, at least in the English version of this gospel passage. For we are told clearly that Peter wanted to set up tents for the principal people involved in this miraculous revelation: Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, implying, of course, that Peter wanted this to be more than just a fleeting experience. Yet at the same time, we are told he didn't know quite what to say, because he and the other two disciples present were terrified. If we apply the most common meaning of that word to this passage, it would make little sense as to why anyone would want this experience to last if it was, in fact, extremely frightening to them. Probably the more proper understanding is conveyed by the word awed or awestruck. Seeing the appearance of Jesus supernaturally transformed, catching a privileged glimpse, however brief, of Jesus in all his resurrected glory was certainly a mountaintop spiritual experience witnessed by these three very privileged disciples. You know, as we look in contemporary times, the experience seems to relate well to what those who report having experienced near-death experiences, as studied extensively by Dr. Raymond Moody in regard to what they see and feel, telling us they view everything around them in the most vivid of colors, and they see incredible beauty everywhere, and they have with that an overall and overwhelming sense of well-being, of calm, joy, peace, serenity, indeed awe, such as no one would ever want that to end. But actually, when we think about it, we don't have to die and come back again to have such revelations. Because as fleeting as these may be, many of us from time to time, even in some unlikely places or circumstances, have experienced that same kind of momentary bliss when we have a profound sense of well-being, a sense that all is right and all will be well. We know that we are loved. We feel privileged to be in the right place amid people whom we love. And so we don't want that moment or those feelings to end. We want that experience to last. Like Peter, then, in a sense, when we have those fleeting moments, we're ready to set up a tent and stay. Such awesome experiences that come to us from time to time, but perhaps not nearly as often as we would like them, are really little previews of coming attractions. We can trust that it's God's way of giving us some glimpse of the heavenly glory without our having to go there just yet. Why, though? Why just get a small taste of what we would want to last? Perhaps for the same reason the transfiguration occurred, which was actually, as our preface prayer will remind us today, to prepare these three key disciples for the passion which Jesus had just recently predicted and toward which he would be inevitably moving when he came down from Mount Tabor and continued his journey to Jerusalem. In having to witness the injustice and horror of his arrest, trial, and crucifixion, Jesus wanted at least these three disciples to be consoled by the promise, by the certainty of the resurrection, so as to recall what they had experienced on that mountaintop, and thus be able to have courage and console and give courage to the others. Yet we know already that only one of the three present on Mount Tabor for the Transfiguration will seem to be able to stand witness at Calvary. For when the going gets tough at the arrest of Jesus and his trial, Peter will deny Jesus and run away. And there is no mention at all of James during the Passion in the Scripture. John, who stands at the foot of the cross, John, who after the burial of Jesus, when all certainly seemed lost to everyone else, was able to anticipate that there was going to be something more, and he remained hopeful. In fact, the gospel reports that John, without seeing the risen Jesus, was the first to believe in the resurrection after merely glancing into that empty tomb and seeing the discarded burial cloths. John was clearly able to do what he was being called to do that day on Mount Tabor. That is to draw from that privileged experience of the Transfiguration in order to keep faith himself and give consolation and courage to others at the worst of times. In the midst of the chaos, difficulties, anxieties of our own problems, it is seemingly easy for us too to forget our mountaintop spiritual experiences, especially if they're so fleeting and we don't savor them as we might, and thus in some sense store them up for when they may be needed most. That is why in Lent each year we are invited to pray, but not just to offer more formal prayers or more prayers of praise or to present more petitions, but we are invited to set aside some significant time to enter into a deeper contemplation, and in that contemplation to recall some of our mountaintop experiences and hopefully create even more of these through that contemplative prayer, such that the tranquility that can come from the assurance that we are indeed in the presence of the living God, however fleeting that consolation may be, will be a memory readily available to strengthen us at those times and in those disturbing situations when it seems God is absent and everything around us and even within us is distressing. And we who are privileged at times to be on that mountaintop in the presence of the risen Christ through contemplation will hopefully be able, at least like the Apostle John, to better keep faith in difficult times and to strengthen others not as privileged as we have been, just as Christ himself was depending on Peter, James, and John. Let us know he's also depending on us to strengthen our brothers and sisters.